Hi guys! Welcome to part 6 on the law on security and credit transactions. Today we'll talk about the contract of Antichresis. Okay? So if you like my videos and you want to find more, please hit the subscribe button. Remember, this is only for educational and informative purposes and is not a substitute for proper legal advice or for studying and understanding the law. Okay? So what is a contract of Antichresis? By the contract of Antichresis, the creditor acquires a right to receive the fruits. Okay? The fruits of real property belonging to the debtor with the obligation of applying those fruits to the interest of the principal obligation if any interest is due, or to the principal if there is no interest. Okay? This contract of Antichresis is also known as a mortgage or mortgagee in possession. Why? Because similar to a contract of real estate mortgage, the real property is the subject of the security. Okay? Remember, this contract is separate from the principal obligation, which may be and is usually a loan. Okay? Now, why do I say mortgagee in possession? Because the mortgagee has possession of the mortgage property which he will use to enforce his claim in his capacity as a mortgagee. Okay? And no other capacity. He is not claiming the real property as an owner, as a lessee. No. He is simply a mortgagee that possesses the property as a mortgagee in order to enforce his claim. How? By applying the fruits of that real property to the interest if owing, and thereafter to the principal obligation. Now, let's go to the characteristics of Antichresis. Okay? First, it's an accessory contract. Why? Because it cannot exist. And actually, it exists to secure the fulfillment of a principal obligation. Without such principal obligation, then Antichresis cannot exist. Okay? Next, a contract of Antichresis is also formal, meaning it must follow the formalities required by law. Remember, in the discussion on contracts, the law will require a certain form, either for validity, greater efficacy, or public convenience. Here, for validity, the form must be complied with. And what is that form? According to the law, both the principal and the interest must be in writing for validity. No? Likewise, the nature of the obligation, specifically that the creditor will acquire the fruits and apply them to the interest and the principal, all that what I just said must be expressly stated in the contract. That's for us to determine that the contract is indeed an Antichresis, because remember the rule in contracts that a contract is determined not by what it is called, not by its name, even if the title is sale. No, you determine what the contract is by following the terms and conditions stipulated therein. Okay? That's a basic principle in contracts. As I have told my students, if you know the basic principles in Oblicon, then you will be able to understand special contracts easily. Okay? Now, again, remember, Antichresis is a formal contract and the formalities must be complied with. What are these formalities? The nature of the obligation must be expressly stated, and the principal and interest of the obligation must likewise be stated in the contract. Okay? Now, Antichresis is also a consensual contract, meaning it is perfected by mere consent. Okay? Nevertheless, property must be delivered because it is essential in a contract of Antichresis that the creditor be in possession of the property in order for him to apply the fruits to the interest if owing and thereafter to the principal. Okay? Likewise, an Antichresis is also indivisible. Even if the principal obligation may be divisible, the Antichresis itself, we remember that's a separate contract, the Antichresis itself is indivisible. Finally, an Antichresis may secure all kinds of obligations, whether pure, conditional, etc. Okay? Now, what is the subject matter? An antichresis only covers the fruits of the real property. And how do we determine the value of these fruits? The law itself tells us that the fruits must be appraised at the actual market value at the time they are applied to the interest or to the principal. Okay? Now we'll talk about the rights of the antichretic creditor. Okay? The creditor. Of course, first, he's entitled to the fruits and income of the property. Okay? Second, the creditor, he may retain the property until the debt is paid. In other words, the antichretic debtor cannot demand the return of the property until he fully complies with the obligation. Finally, since this antichresis is a contract that secures the fulfillment of a principal obligation, the antichretic creditor has the right to petition the court for the sale of the property in case of non-payment or the failure to satisfy the principal obligation. The parties may also agree that the rules on extrajudicial foreclosure will govern, in which case there must be a stipulation that a power to extrajudicially foreclose the antichresis is written within the contract itself. For more detailed discussion on extrajudicial foreclosure, please refer to my vlog on real estate mortgage. Okay? Now we're done with the rights of the antichretic creditor. Let's go to his obligations. Okay? What are the obligations of the antichretic creditor? Okay, first, he's obliged to pay taxes and charges upon the property as well as the necessary expenses for preservation or repair of the property. Okay? Now he also has the right to deduct those expenses and the taxes from the fruits which he receives from the thing. Okay? Now, this obligation to pay taxes and necessary expenses may be done away with if the parties so provide, through an express stipulation. Okay? In other words, by stipulation, the parties may agree that the creditor will not be liable to pay taxes and expenses. However, if there is no stipulation, then that is the obligation of the creditor. Now, what if the creditor does not want to pay those taxes or necessary expenses? Does he still have an alternative? Other than the stipulation I mentioned earlier, yes, he has an alternative. Okay? The creditor may compel the debtor to regain the enjoyment or repossess the property. Okay? In which case, the creditor will be relieved of paying for the taxes, charges, and necessary expenses. Okay? However, the creditor cannot do that. That right will be denied if the parties expressly stipulate that such right will be denied to the creditor. Okay? And again, if there's no stipulation, then that right is available. Okay? Second obligation of the antichretic creditor is that he should apply fruits first to the interest, if owing, and then to the principal. Okay? That follows the general rule in obligations and contracts that payment must first be applied to the interest before the principal. Okay? And the final obligation of the antichretic creditor is to render an account of the fruits to the debtor. Okay? This is for the sake of transparency and to provide any circumvention on the laws of usury, although the usury law is suspended, But that is for the purpose of preventing fraud, etc. Okay? Now, please take note that similar to the previous discussions on pledge and mortgage, that pactum commissorium also exists here. Again, let's review. What is a pactum commissorium? It is a stipulation providing for the automatic appropriation by the creditor of the property. in case of non-payment of the principal obligation. That stipulation is prohibited. Okay? So that stipulation should not appear in a contract of antichresis. If it so appears there, then only the stipulation will be void. The contract of antichresis is still valid. Okay? Okay, finally, let's just talk about this last concept, that the antichretic creditor and his successors cannot acquire ownership over the property through prescription. If you have paid attention in my Obligon class, you will know that prescription is a mode of acquisition of ownership through the passage of time. In other words, through the mere passage of time, rights may be acquired or lost. Okay? So here, an antichretic creditor cannot become an owner through the passage of time or through prescription. Why? Because the antichretic creditor does not possess the property in the concept of an owner. He is a mere antichretic creditor or a mortgagee in possession. In order for acquisitive prescription to apply and for the person to become the owner through acquisitive prescription, the holding of the land must be in the concept of an owner, which is not the case in an antichretic creditor. Okay? So that's it for Antichresis. It is very short and I hope you have picked up a thing or two. I'll see you for the final video on chattel mortgage. Okay? Bye!